Hi there. If you're watching this video, chances are you or someone you love has started to notice a few small changes. Nothing too alarming yet, but enough to stir up a little worry inside. Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you were there? Maybe you were telling a story you've told 100 times, and suddenly the next word just wouldn't come. Or you felt more tired than usual, not really in the mood to talk, and the things that used to bring you joy just don't light you up anymore? I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to talk, just talk. With over 30 years of experience working with folks over 60, I've learned something deeply important. Changes in memory, mood, or behavior are sometimes the earliest knocks on the door from something bigger. Dementia, or Alzheimer's, as many call it, doesn't arrive overnight. It tiptoes in, soft and silent, like a dry leaf falling onto the porch. You barely notice it until one day you realize you've started forgetting more than you'd like to admit. In today's video, I want to invite you to sit with me just like two friends chatting on a quiet afternoon and walk through 12 early signs of dementia that often go unnoticed. And more importantly, how recognizing them early might help you hold on longer to your memories, your feelings, and your sense of self. Are you ready? Let's begin. Sign number 1. Language problems. I want you to take a minute and picture this. You're sitting with your grandchild, sharing one of your favorite stories from your younger days, a story you've told so many times before, the kind that used to make the whole family laugh. But this time, you get just a few sentences in, and suddenly you freeze. A simple word, one you know so well, just slips away. It's right on the tip of your tongue, but you can't find it. You pause. You glance at your grandchild's curious eyes, and instead of continuing, you change the subject, force a smile. But inside, you're unsettled. That exact feeling, that moment of hesitation, is how many of my patients first realize something isn't quite right. Something is happening with their words. One of my patients, Margaret, 68 years old, used to be a literature teacher, a natural storyteller. She loved words. But one rainy afternoon, she sat down in my office and said, "Doctor, I'm scared. The other night I told the same story 3 times at a dinner party, and I didn't even realize it. I also called my daughter by the wrong name." That's not just forgetfulness. That's a form of aphasia, a disruption in language that's often one of the earliest, most subtle signs of dementia. It usually starts with trouble finding words, or using the wrong words, like saying shirt when you mean scarf, or simply saying this thing instead of the actual name. Over time, conversations become more difficult. People begin to pause mid-sentence, lose their train of thought, repeat themselves, and often they don't even notice it's happening. Some become quieter not because they don't want to talk, but because they're afraid they'll say the wrong thing, afraid of being misunderstood or judged. So they slowly withdraw from conversations, from family gatherings, from the joy of simply connecting. Have you ever felt that way? Or maybe you've seen someone in your family start to pull back like that. Now, look, we all forget names sometimes. We all stumble over our words or repeat a story. That's human. That's aging. But when it happens often, when it affects daily communication, when it starts to feel like something's slipping, it's time to pay attention. Because dementia doesn't begin with a bang. It arrives as a series of small changes, and language problems are often one of the very first doors it knocks on. From a scientific point of view, studies have shown that language difficulties often show up years before noticeable memory loss. Why? Because the parts of the brain that control speech and vocabulary start to decline before we even realize it, turning what used to be simple conversation into a daily challenge. So if you or someone you love is often repeating themselves, searching for the right words, or struggling to express simple thoughts, don't ignore it. Don't brush it off. Start a conversation. See a doctor. And begin building a lifestyle that helps support brain health. Because language isn't just about words. It's how we tell the story of who we are. And we should never let that story fade into silence. Sign number 2. Changes in walking and movement. Let me ask you to imagine something very simple. It's morning. You get out of bed, like always, and walk a few steps into the kitchen to make your cup of coffee. But today, something feels a little off. Your legs aren't moving the way they used to. Your steps are shorter, slower, and without realizing it, you're dragging your feet across the floor. You stop, and you ask yourself, am I just tired, or is it the weather? But what if it's neither? See, in all my years working with older adults, I've seen many people come in for something as small as feeling a bit unsteady. But after running a few neurological tests, what we often find is this. These subtle changes in movement can be one of the earliest signs of dementia. I remember one patient, Bill, a retired Army officer. He told me, "Doc, I'm not forgetting anything, but I've been tripping more. Stairs are harder, and my wife says I walk like I'm dragging my slippers outside." Later, an MRI showed early degeneration in the area of the brain that controls motor function long before memory loss had even begun. You see, many people think dementia is just about memory. But actually, it also affects how we move our balance, coordination, and how well we can control our muscles. You might notice things like walking slower without knowing why, feeling off balance, maybe a little dizzy when turning your head, having trouble using a spoon or fork, or maybe you've been dropping things more often than usual. These aren't just signs of getting older. They're quiet signals from the brain, a way of saying, hey, something's changing in here. Science backs this up. When the brain regions responsible for movement begin to decline, people may start walking unevenly, with shorter steps or leaning to one side. Some even say it feels like their legs don't quite respond the way they used to, like they've lost control over their own feet. If you've ever felt this yourself, or noticed someone you love walking differently, don't brush it off. I'm not telling you this to make you worried. I'm telling you this so you can notice early and take action early. There are so many ways to help, from physical therapy and balance training to lifestyle changes that improve brain and body coordination. And most importantly, when caught early, these signs give you a chance to protect your memory and your independence. Because sometimes, a slower step, if we notice it in time, can be the very thing that helps you stay on your path just a little longer. Sign number 3, changes in the senses. Let me ask you something simple. When was the last time you smelled fresh bread baking in the oven, or caught the scent of flowers in your garden? You see, most people don't realize this, but our senses, especially smell and spatial awareness, are often the very first places where dementia quietly shows up. And when it does, it doesn't make a big entrance. It slips in gently, gradually, like a soft breeze you didn't notice until the air felt different. I had a patient, Mrs. Elaine, who came to me with a concern I honestly didn't expect. She said, "Doctor, lately I can't smell my morning coffee anymore. I thought maybe the coffee just wasn't good until my daughter said, 'Mom, the whole house smells amazing. Can't you smell it?' We did a few tests, and sure enough, she was losing her sense of smell. Turns out, loss of smell is one of the early signs of Alzheimer's, and sadly, it's one that gets overlooked all the time. Here's something important to know. Our brain processes sensory information like smell, taste, sound, and depth before it even processes memory. So, when the parts of the brain responsible for sensing the world start to break down, the familiar suddenly feels unfamiliar. You might notice things like food not smelling or tasting the way it used to, everything tasting bland or strangely bitter, trouble pouring water into a glass without spilling, or stumbling more often on stairs, feeling lost or overwhelmed in crowded places like markets or grocery stores, becoming unusually sensitive to sounds, conversations, the television, even street noise may suddenly feel too loud or too much. Or the opposite. Some people begin to lose their hearing without realizing it, and that puts extra stress on the brain, which now has to work harder just to keep up. Over time, this mental strain can lead to fatigue, confusion, and eventually cognitive decline. I know this might sound scary, but I want you to look at it another way. If sensory changes are one of the first signs dementia uses to knock on the door, then maybe it's also one of our first chances to catch it early. Research shows that loss of smell, especially when combined with changes in taste or spatial awareness, can occur 5 to 10 years before noticeable memory loss. That's not something to ignore. So if you or someone you love feels like something just seems off with the senses, don't brush it aside. Treat it like a gentle whisper from the body, a quiet little alarm bell saying, "Hey, it's time to check in with your brain." Start with small things. Get a hearing test. Practice mindfulness or deep breathing to reconnect with your senses. Eat well, stay active, and challenge your brain every day, even with little things like puzzles, walks in nature, or simply cooking something new. Because our senses aren't just how we experience the world, they're the bridge between memory and meaning, between the mind and the soul. When the brain regions responsible for movement begin to decline, people may start walking unevenly, with shorter steps, or leaning to one side. Some even say it feels like their legs don't quite respond the way they used to, like they've lost control over their own feet. If you've ever felt this yourself, or noticed someone you love walking differently, don't brush it off. I'm not telling you this to make you worried. I'm telling you this so you can notice early and take action early. There are so many ways to help, from physical therapy and balance training to lifestyle changes that improve brain and body coordination. And most importantly, when caught early, these signs give you a chance to protect your memory and your independence. Because sometimes, a slower step, if we notice it in time, can be the very thing that helps you stay on your path just a little longer. Sign number 4. Disrupted sleep. There's something one of my older patients, Mr. Richards, said to me that I'll never forget. He walked into my office, dark circles under his eyes, and said quietly, "I just can't sleep, doctor. Every time I doze off, I wake up suddenly like I'm falling from somewhere. And during the day, I'm just exhausted. No energy. I don't want to do anything." As we talked more, he shared that he sometimes talks in his sleep, even kicks so hard that his wife has to move to the other room. Now, most people would chalk that up to just getting older, or a bit of stress. But what many don't realize is, disturbed sleep like this can actually be an early warning sign of dementia. Sleep, especially for middle-aged and older adults, isn't just about rest. It's a sacred window of time when the brain repairs itself, clears out toxins, and stores away memories. When sleep is constantly interrupted, that cleaning process breaks down. And over time, so does the brain. In fact, research out of Stanford University shows that people with disrupted REM sleep, the deep sleep stage where we dream, face a much higher risk of developing conditions like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. So what should you watch for? Feeling extremely sleepy during the day, even if you slept through the night. Tossing and turning for hours, unable to fall asleep. Waking up multiple times, or too early, and still feeling tired. Talking in your sleep. Sudden body movements, disturbing dreams, even hallucinations as you're waking up. All of these can be early signs of stress on your brain's nervous system. And yet, sleep problems are often brushed aside. People blame it on getting older or stress, or just think, "I've always been a light sleeper." But if you're watching this video right now, I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself, have I really been sleeping well lately? When I wake up, do I feel rested or just worn out? If your answer leans toward the second one, maybe it's time to give your sleep the attention it truly deserves, not just to feel rested, but to protect your brain from silent decline. In both prevention and treatment of dementia, good sleep is a foundation. I often share a few simple tips with my patients. Try to stick to a consistent bedtime even on weekends. Avoid screens, television, phone, tablet, for at least 1-2 hours before bed. Cut back on caffeine after 2 p.m. And if you snore heavily, gasp for air, or suspect sleep apnea, get it checked. That kind of oxygen disruption is like slowly suffocating your brain every night. You see, sleep isn't a luxury. It's healing power if we respect it, protect it, and nurture it the right way. Because a truly restful night's sleep doesn't just give you clarity the next day. It's one of the most powerful tools we have to fight off cognitive decline before it even begins. Sign number 5. Apathy, withdrawal, and loss of interest. There's a change I see often in older adults, and yet it's one of the most overlooked. It's not memory. It's not movement. It's something quieter. It's apathy. Not sadness, not depression, but a kind of emptiness, like someone has dimmed the light inside their soul. One of my patients, Helen, used to be the life of every family gathering. She loved gardening, singing, chatting with friends. She lit up every room she walked into. But just a year later, her daughter came to me in tears. She said, "My mom doesn't want to go out anymore. She says flowers all look the same, that her friends don't have anything new to say. She just sits by the window all day." I saw Helen again. Her eyes no longer sparkled. She wasn't sad. She wasn't happy. She was blank. We call that apathy, a loss of emotion, a lack of motivation. And the scary part is, it doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't cry, or complain, or make noise. It just quietly pulls away. Have you ever felt like that? Like you don't really want to go out anymore? Like your favorite things feel dull now, books don't excite you, music feels flat, nothing sounds fun? Maybe you've even asked yourself, why don't I feel like doing anything these days? Here's what we know. Dementia doesn't just affect memory, it also affects the parts of the brain responsible for emotion, motivation, and connection. So, when someone starts to lose interest in what used to bring them joy, when they stop reaching out, stop reacting, stop caring, it's not just a personality shift. It's the brain's way of whispering, "I'm struggling." Now, it's easy to confuse this with depression. But there's a subtle difference. People with depression often feel sad, guilty, hopeless. They cry, they ache. But people with early dementia-related apathy, they just don't care anymore. They don't seek joy, but they're also not upset without it. It's like the volume on life has been turned down slowly, quietly, over time. And truthfully, I think this sign is harder for the family than for the person going through it. Because from the outside, they may still smile, still sit with you, still be there. But something in them has stepped back. You'll notice it in the little things. They stop telling stories. Stop asking how others are doing. Don't want to take photos. Don't want to leave the house. And one day, you realize, the person you love has slowly pulled away and you didn't even see it happening. But listen to me, it's not too late. It is never too late. If you see these signs in someone you care about, take them to get checked gently, without fear. And even more important, give them a reason to reconnect. A full family dinner. A short trip somewhere special. An old song they loved. A story they once told and now need to hear again. Because sometimes all it takes is one small spark to reignite a fire that's been quietly fading for far too long. Sign number 6. Trouble expressing thoughts and repeating questions. One of the ways we know we're still ourselves is through communication. Talking, sharing, asking questions, responding naturally in conversation. But when the brain begins to change, even in the earliest stages, this simple, everyday thing becomes harder than we expect. I remember one of my patients, Peter, 74 years old. He used to be the voice of his local radio station, literally. His voice was known across town. But during a visit, he looked at me quietly and said, "I can still hear fine, I understand everything. But when I try to say something, the words just get stuck. I know what I want to say. I just can't seem to say it." That's when I knew Peter was experiencing the early stages of a communication disorder. It wasn't memory loss. Exactly. It was something harder to describe: the inability to express thoughts clearly. Dementia doesn't just make people forget. It disrupts the way the brain organizes and produces language. You might notice signs like struggling to find the right words, even very familiar ones, using vague terms like that thing or you know, the thing with the stuff, starting a sentence, then drifting off or repeating from the beginning, mixing up names even of people sitting right in front of them, repeating the same question over and over, even after it's been answered. If someone you love has asked, "What day is it today?" or "When are you coming back?" multiple times in just a few minutes, that's not ordinary forgetfulness. That's the brain failing to retain the answer. And I know this doesn't just frustrate the person living with it. It's hard on family too. One woman once told me, "My mom asked me the same thing 7 or 8 times." I snapped. I felt so guilty later when I looked in her eyes and realized she truly didn't remember asking. If you've ever been in that position, let me tell you, this repetition isn't intentional. It's the brain's silent way of saying, "I'm overwhelmed. I need help." In medical terms, we call it repetitive questioning, and it often happens due to damage in the hippocampus, the part of the brain that stores new information. Basically, the brain isn't able to record what you just said. So the same question returns, over and over, like a loop. What can you do? I usually encourage families to stay calm, don't show frustration. Negative emotions can cause confusion or panic. Use visual aids, post-it notes, wall calendars, large whiteboards with date, time info, or even simple photos as reminders. Redirect gently. After answering, shift the topic to something familiar, an old song, a favorite story, or a simple task. And most importantly, remember this. When someone starts repeating themselves, your patient listening may be the greatest gift of all. Because sometimes what they really need isn't the answer. It's the reassurance that they're still connected, still loved, even as memory fades. Sign number 7, disorientation in time and space. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why you went in there? Or sat quietly one afternoon and asked yourself, "Wait, what day is it today?" Most of us have had moments like that, little lapses, harmless and passing. But when it starts happening more often, more deeply, and alongside other changes, it might be something more serious. It could be an early sign of dementia. I once treated a man named Frank, 72 years old. He'd retired after 3 decades as a city bus driver. One afternoon, after a routine trip to the local grocery store just a few blocks from home, he suddenly couldn't remember how to get back. He called his family in a panic and said, "I know this place. It's familiar, but I don't know whether to turn left or right anymore." That was the moment we realized this wasn't just aging. This was something deeper. Disorientation isn't just about forgetting. It's when the brain loses its internal compass, the ability to know where you are in time and space. You may notice things like forgetting what day it is or even the month or year. Confusing time periods, thinking it's the 1970s, calling a grandchild son, or mistaking a son for a brother. Getting lost in familiar neighborhoods, unsure how to get home. Feeling confused in places like the grocery store, not remembering why you went. Asking repeatedly, "Where am I?" or looking lost in a familiar room. I once asked a patient in the hospital, "Do you know what day it is today?" She smiled and said, "It's Tuesday, I think. October?" But it was actually Friday in May. And the problem wasn't that she was wrong. It was that she truly believed she was right. This happens when the brain's time and place centers, especially in the temporal and parietal lobes, start to weaken. It's like the mental calendar and clock inside the brain begins to lose track, and the world becomes unfamiliar, even when it's not. This is one of the more dangerous signs of dementia, because it can lead to wandering and getting lost, exposure to danger like extreme weather, unsafe roads, or unfamiliar areas, anxiety, fear, panic, and in some cases, full-on psychological crisis. So, what can you do? If a loved one starts confusing dates, asking the same time-based questions over and over, or seems disoriented outside, please don't brush it off. And please don't scold, and don't keep repeating the answer with frustration. Instead, make their environment easier to navigate: big calendars, color-coded reminders. Always have them carry ID or contact info. Avoid letting them go out alone, especially to crowded or unfamiliar places. And most importantly, get a medical evaluation as early as possible. Because in this journey, knowing where we are in space and in life is one of the most important parts of holding on to who we are. And it's also one of the first things dementia tries to take from us, unless we act early enough to hold it close. What can you do? I usually encourage families to stay calm. Don't show frustration. Negative emotions can cause confusion or panic. Use visual aids, post-it notes, wall calendars, large whiteboards with date, time info, or even simple photos as reminders. Redirect gently. After answering, shift the topic to something familiar: an old song, a favorite story, or a simple task. And most importantly, remember this: when someone starts repeating themselves, your patient listening may be the greatest gift of all. Because sometimes what they really need isn't the answer. It's the reassurance that they're still connected, still loved, even as memory fades. Sign number 8. Repeating the same question over and over. You've probably experienced this before. You're sitting with an older loved one, having a nice chat, and they turn to you and ask, "What day is it today?" You smile and answer, "It's Wednesday, Mom." But not 5 minutes later, they ask again. Same words, same tone. Just as innocent as the first time. At first, you're patient. You answer again. But by the 4th or 5th time, frustration starts to creep in. You snap, "I just told you that." And your loved one just sits there, confused. Maybe they smile awkwardly. Maybe they go quiet. Because they don't understand what they did wrong. Let me tell you something important. When someone repeats a question over and over, it's not because they're trying to annoy you. It's because their brain simply isn't holding on to the answer. This is known as repetitive questioning, and it's a very common sign of early dementia. It happens when the part of the brain responsible for short-term memory, especially the hippocampus, starts to break down. The brain receives the answer, but doesn't save it. So just a few minutes later, it's as if you never answered at all. I once treated an older gentleman named Arthur. One morning, he asked his wife over 10 times, "When is our grandson coming to visit?" She tried to stay calm, but eventually she broke down in tears. She said, "I'm not angry at him. I just feel heartbroken that he doesn't even realize he's asked before." That story has stuck with me for years because it reminds me that dementia doesn't just affect the person living with it. It also takes a toll on the ones who love and care for them. So, how do we respond to this with compassion? From my experience, here are a few ways that truly help. Stay calm. Even if you've answered the same question a dozen times, try not to show frustration. Your tone of voice, your patience, is medicine in its own right. Write it down. Place reminders in visible places: a whiteboard, sticky notes, or the phone screen. Example: today is Wednesday. Grandson arrives at 2 p.m. This gives the person a way to check for themselves without needing to rely fully on memory. Gently redirect. After answering, shift the conversation. Tell a related story, play a familiar song, or guide them toward a positive memory. This can break the cycle of repetition in a natural, soothing way. I know caregiving isn't easy. There will be moments when you're tired, moments when you want to scream, moments when you ask yourself, "Why don't they remember what I just said?" But I want you to remember this: they are still there. Still your parent, still your grandparent, still your beloved partner. They just need help remembering, not only with words, but with love and patience. Because for someone slowly losing their grip on the world, How we respond to their forgetfulness may be the last thing they truly remember. And that can make all the difference. Sign number 9. Misplacing objects in strange places. One morning, a daughter spent nearly half an hour looking for her phone. She finally found it, inside the fridge, next to the milk carton. She turned to her mother, who was calmly sipping tea, and asked, "Mom, did you put the phone in the fridge?" Her mother frowned, puzzled. "No, I don't think I did." Now, to some people, this might sound like a funny little story. But to me, someone who's spent decades caring for older adults, this is a red flag. Misplacing items in unusual places is one of the most common and most revealing early signs of dementia. We're not just talking about forgetting where you put your keys. We're talking about finding the remote control in your shoe rack, your eyeglasses in a cookie jar, your wallet in the freezer, your toothbrush next to the stove. This isn't just forgetfulness, it's a sign that the brain is struggling with how it organizes space, context, and function. One of my patients, Mr. Walter, was a retired mechanical engineer, meticulous, neat. And yet, a few years ago, he put his phone inside a kettle. When asked about it, he blamed his grandson. "That boy must have been playing around. I didn't do that." But the truth? It kept happening. Eventually, his family brought him in, and tests confirmed early-stage dementia. Why does this happen? Because our brain doesn't just remember what an object is, it also remembers where it belongs and why we use it. When the parts of the brain responsible for spatial awareness and object function, especially the parietal lobe, start to decline, that whole map begins to break down. The person still recognizes the object, but not its context, not where it goes, not how it fits into their daily life. Worse yet, when they can't find it later, they often become confused, even suspicious. I've seen patients accuse their own family of stealing things, hiding things simply because they themselves put it in the wrong place and forgot. It's heartbreaking for everyone involved. So, if someone you love starts frequently finding things in odd places, accusing others of hiding or stealing, seeming upset or panicked when they lose something they just had, please know, this isn't just a harmless slip. It may be one of the earliest doors through which dementia enters. What can you do? Observe with kindness. Don't jump to conclusions or criticize. At first, just watch how often it happens. Create clear, consistent spaces. Label drawers. Use color markers. Make familiar corners where key items always live. Avoid blaming or shaming. Confrontation only deepens their confusion and makes them feel guilty, which pushes them further into silence. And most importantly, remember that for someone who's starting to forget, the real issue isn't the lost object. It's the loss of control, the feeling that they no longer trust their own mind. Your gentleness may be the only compass they have left to help them feel safe in their own home and safe with you. Even when memory fades, compassion still speaks volumes. Sign number 10. Hallucinations. Seeing, hearing, or smelling. What isn't there? I once asked one of my older patients, "Have you been sleeping well lately?" He paused, then said, "Pretty well, doctor. But last night, I saw a man standing at the foot of my bed, just staring at me. I woke my wife, but he was gone." Then he added quietly, "I know it wasn't real, but the fear, that was very real." Hallucinations, seeing, hearing, or smelling things that aren't actually there, are one of the lesser-known but very real early signs of dementia, especially in conditions like Lewy body dementia or advanced Alzheimer's. People might experience seeing strangers in their room, hearing someone call their name when no one's around, smelling smoke, burning food, or flowers when there's nothing there, feeling watched, or sensing a strange presence nearby. Imagine this. You're sitting quietly in your living room. Suddenly, you hear someone whisper your name. You look around, nothing. It happens again tomorrow, and the next day. That's not just scary, that shakes your trust in your own mind. A husband once told me about his wife. She asked me to close all the curtains, lock the doors. She was convinced the neighbors were spying on us. I knew it wasn't real, but she didn't, and to her, it was terrifying. Now let me be clear. Hallucinations in dementia are not the same as schizophrenia. They happen when the brain struggles to distinguish between memory, perception, and reality. And they're often triggered or worsened by sleep deprivation, infections, certain medications, sudden disorientation or confusion. The sad part? Family members often respond with disbelief. Who? There's no one there, stop imagining things. Mom, you're being paranoid. Dad, don't scare me like that. But these reactions only deepen the fear and the isolation. Because now, the person isn't just afraid. They feel like no one believes them. No one understands. So what can we do? Stay calm. Acknowledge their feelings. Instead of saying, that's not real, try. That must have been scary. Can you tell me more about what you saw? Create a safe, soothing space. Keep the room well lit. Avoid strong shadows, loud noises, or confusing visuals. Track the patterns. Take note of when and how these experiences happen, and talk to a doctor. Sometimes it's a side effect of medication, sleep disturbance, or even a minor infection. And above all, believe them. Even if what they see isn't real, their fear is real. And what they need most is not correction, but connection. Because for someone drifting in and out of reality, just knowing you're there, calm, listening, and non-judgmental, can be more grounding than any medicine. A hand to hold, a voice that says, I'm here, and a heart that reminds them they're still seen, still loved, still safe. Sign number 11. Loss of personal hygiene control. I still remember the first time a son brought his father in for a visit. His voice was shaking. Doctor, lately my dad's been wetting the bed at night. But what worries me more is that he doesn't seem bothered by it. He just brushes it off and says it was spilled water. Then he paused and added softly, my dad's always been a meticulous man, always clean, tidy, proper. But now, he doesn't even remember if he just went to the bathroom or not. Loss of bladder or bowel control is one of the most sensitive signs of progressing dementia. It's something few people want to talk about. But as someone who's walked alongside hundreds of elderly patients, I want to say this clearly. This is common, and it's not just physical. It hits a person's dignity, self-respect, and sense of identity. So why does this happen? As dementia progresses and parts of the brain related to behavior, awareness, and reflexes begin to decline, people may no longer recognize the signals from their bladder or bowels, forget where the bathroom is or how to use it, confuse whether they've already gone or not, or sometimes not realize an accident has even happened. Imagine being someone who once led a household, and now suddenly you wet your pants in front of your children or grandchildren. What follows is often not just discomfort but shame, withdrawal, and quiet heartbreak. I once cared for a retired teacher, a graceful, elegant woman. She burst into tears after an accident at the hospital. She whispered, I feel like a child who knows nothing. Like I'm losing pieces of myself bit by bit. That moment stayed with me. This is where family plays a crucial role. Not just to help clean up, but to help preserve their dignity. Here's what you can do. Set a regular bathroom schedule. Try every 2-3 hours to prevent surprises. Gentle routines help. Use discreet support products. There are many thin, comfortable adult diapers and liners that protect with privacy and ease. Don't make it a big deal. When accidents happen, and they will handle them calmly and quietly. Sometimes, a simple line like, it's okay, Dad, let's just get cleaned up real quick, can feel like an umbrella in an emotional storm. And the most important thing? Never let a moment of physical loss take away someone's respect, dignity, or humanity. Because inside every aging body that's growing weaker, there's a soul still fighting to hold on to who they are. And we as loved ones, as caregivers, can be that anchor, that safe place that says, even if your body forgets, I remember who you are. You're still worthy. You're still loved. You're still you. Sign number 12. Changes in personality and emotions. I once knew a man named John. He used to be the kindest father, calm, gentle, thoughtful. But one day, his wife came to me looking confused and concerned. Doctor, lately he's been getting angry for no reason. He accuses the neighbors of stealing things. Sometimes he looks at me like I'm a stranger. He's not the man I used to know. When dementia starts affecting the emotional control centers of the brain, especially the frontal and temporal lobes, a person's personality can begin to shift in ways that are hard to understand. And often, it's not recognized as a medical symptom. People just say things like, "He's changed. Mom's always irritated now. She's not as warm or joyful anymore." These changes may seem small at first, but they matter. They are one of the early, subtle signs of cognitive decline. You might notice sudden irritability or anger over small things, suspicion thinking someone is stealing or talking behind their back, coldness or detachment, no longer showing love or affection, laughing at inappropriate times, or strange emotional reactions. I once asked a very gentle elderly lady, "Why do you seem upset today?" She frowned and replied, "They're all talking about me. They don't want me here." No one said a thing, but that's how she felt, because her brain could no longer process emotions and logic the way it used to. Changes like this can be painful not just for the person, but for their family. You might wonder, why has the person I love once kind and understanding become so distant, angry, or mistrusting? The truth is, it's not that they don't love you anymore. It's that their brain can no longer help them show that love the way they used to. So, what can you do? Don't argue. People with dementia can't reason the way they once did. Arguing or correcting only creates more stress and confusion. Prioritize safety. If their anger turns into aggression, gently remove anything dangerous and find ways to calm the situation. Lead with empathy, not reaction. Sometimes, anger is just fear wearing a different mask. They're scared of what's happening inside their mind and they don't know how to say it. I once told a young woman, heartbroken over her mother's sudden mood swings, "Your mom is still in there. It's just that the road to her feelings is now covered in fog." Be the one who holds her hand and walks with her through it. Because dementia doesn't just take memory. It changes how we feel, how we connect, and how we show up in the world. But if we recognize it early, respond with compassion, and stay close, we can still protect the gentle moments, the ones where they feel safe, seen, and still themselves. Even if it's just through a look, a soft touch, or a quiet whisper. "It's okay, Mom. I'm right here." Dear friend, we've just walked through 12 early signs of dementia. Subtle, quiet changes that may seem small, but could be the very first door to a deeper journey, not just for the person affected, but for the entire family. From a slower step, a restless night, a repeated question, to that lost look when someone no longer recognizes a loved one. Every little detail is the brain's quiet way of reaching out for help. And if we learn to truly listen, we may still hold on to what matters most: our memories, our emotions, our human connection. I've always believed understanding is the first step toward compassion. And if you've watched this far, maybe your heart is thinking of someone right now, a loved one, or maybe even yourself, someone who needs to be seen, supported, and cared for with love and dignity. If this video brought you something meaningful, even just a moment of reflection, a reminder, or a small spark of hope, I'd love for you to do a few things. Hit the like button to help spread this message to more people who need it. Leave a comment below. Which sign do you think is easiest to overlook? Or what has your experience been like caring for someone close to you? I'd truly love to hear your story. Share this video with your friends and family, especially those caring for older loved ones. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss upcoming videos where I'll continue sharing heartfelt and practical knowledge about senior health and aging with grace. Let's build a community together, a place of understanding, compassion, and action. Because supporting the aging brain isn't just a doctor's job. It's a matter of the heart. 20. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you again in the next video.